Oh, hi, Mark.
Borderlands is a fantastic series hinged on almost exactly one game. Yeah, the first title isn't anything special in hindsight, with plenty of forgettable characters and weapons, an anemic, nearly non-existent plot, and a conclusion that's more like pressing the stop button on the VCR than an actual ending. And the prequel might have very little to set itself apart from other titles in the series, and might contain a cast where 2 out of every 3 characters dies, but that hasn't stopped Borderlands 2 from being considered not just the best entry in the series, but one of the best FPSs ever made. A story that's both comedic yet gripping, a weapon variety that's mind-blowing and diverse, and playable characters that are all super easy to learn but incredibly difficult to master. And with 90 level ups standing between you and Vault Hunter infamy, there's a lot to take in. This game is still like the best deal on Steam. It had been 7 years since the story of Borderlands was able to continue, barring a Telltale game that is currently out of print. So how does Borderlands 3 improve upon the formula? Can it compare with Borderlands 2? No. But also yes. Both. But first, a no-spoiler plot synopsis. Borderlands 3 takes place 7 years after the second game, with the Vault Key having fallen into the wrong hands after Commander Lilith's fight for Sanctuary. The Children of the Vault, a bandit clan run by the villainous Sirens, the Calypso twins, have been campaigning via the internet, or the EchoNet in this world, to build up a cult powerful enough to rip open the vaults and take over the 6 galaxies. The player is contacted by Lilith, much the same way Angel contacted the player in Borderlands 1, and has them storm a COV propaganda center for information about the Vault Key. This leads them to Promethea and leads to a messy run-in with the Calypsos who use their powers to steal Lilith's. She is now no longer a siren, but is still determined to rally an army of her own aboard Sanctuary 3, don't ask where the second one went, and take down the cult for good. The setup works for sure, and the actual main campaign is put together alright. Just there's one issue I personally have with it. It's them. Everyone else has said it, I want to say it. Handsome Jack's just better. Troy and Tyreen feel like they were designed to play off of Handsome Jack nostalgia. They both have this sort of fake, jovial tech bro attitude to them. Just the twins are a lot more peppy and upbeat, whereas Jack's more of just a fast-talking businessman. And with that comes the biggest difference between the two for me. Emotional range. Jack can deliver a cold, seething monologue, he can be upbeat and crack jokes at your expense, and he gives some of the most heart-wrenchingly angry and upset dialogue I've ever heard in a game, during its big gut punch moment. And when Jack has nothing left to lose, his bitter frustration at the Vault Hunters creeps into his normal tone of voice. Damon Clark plays Handsome Jack phenomenally well, and his performance is part of what made Borderlands 2 so special. During the equivalent gut punch scene in Borderlands 3, Troy and Tyreen continually yuck it up immediately after the quest is over, and they continue to joke throughout the entire game. It just feels distasteful, but also very shallow. They don't really get to have a more complex characterization and deliver a more nuanced performance, and by the time that any amount of characterization can begin to creep in, the game's pretty much over, whereas Jack got to seethe at the player pretty much starting at the end of Act 2. I'll cover spoilers and stuff in a moment to be polite, but Jesus, I'm not a fan of the performance given by the Calypsos. They're good. Well, okay. The performance is okay. I actually like both voice actors. I don't know if they were given great direction. I don't know if they were given very great direction, but also their entire shtick, the writing is very one note. It's missing that sort of human quality that Damon Clark and Handsome Jack had. Aesthetically, Borderlands 3 is a newer game in Unreal 4 versus Unreal 3. That really says it all. Higher fidelity textures, more complex character outlines, better post-processing, lighting, atmospheric effects. But the art style hasn't evolved too terribly much. Actually, strike that. A lot of the characters have very, very distinct outfit decisions. And I mean, a lot of like weapon straps and leather, and a lot of mechanical augments. I get it, it's a sci-fi game. But Borderlands 2 and the prequel, and for that matter, the Tales games in the first game, didn't have a lot of that. And while it does give 3 its own unique quality, it just feels a little weird. It's really the one thing that stuck out most to me in Borderlands 3's art. Hell, just compare Claptrap between the 3 numbered games. I like some of the character redesigns. Tannis and Marcus are both very well done. I'm not sure how I feel about the thing attached to Ellie, though. I'm not a fan. And for what it's worth, it's mostly front-loaded. Characters you meet a little later in the game, like Hammerlock and Wainwright Jacobs, lack or merely downplay these combat straps and accoutrements, save for the occasional little exception. It doesn't look too terribly different from Borderlands 2 despite that, especially if you've been playing that game with its HD texture pack. At least if you're around a whole lot of incidental junk items or you're on Pandora, it definitely looks very similar. Actually, some of the junk is straight up reused from Borderlands 2. And not in a good way. There's a moment where you go through some junk and you find an old vending machine from Borderlands 2, and there's a bunch of the Borderlands 3 vending machines in the same area. That's a nice touch. But I'm talking, for instance, on Eden 6, there's a corkboard that contains flyers for Handsome Jack and Jimmy Jenkins. As if nobody's had a good idea to put on the board for the better part of a decade. It just feels a little sloppy. Also, that font, gross. The font used for Borderlands 2 subtitles, genius. That's it, that's all. Now for the positives. The guns look amazing. They're very intricately detailed, and the small touches like the correct number of unloaded rounds in a revolver, or the hammer flying back, or even just watching all the moving parts work their magic is something truly special, especially given the sheer number of variables at work. Kudos to the gun art team. They look amazing, and they sound amazing. The weaponry is where all this money went for sure, and it sure as hell feels like it. Blasting away with a Jacobs shotgun, ramming down range in the Torque pistol, using one of Atlas's funky shoulder-mounted things, or even just going to town, turning your iridium into guns with a post-game fabricator item, feels amazing. And it is by far the best part about this game. The sound is awesome, visuals are awesome, specifically about the guns. The guns look and sound great. And for what it's worth, there is actually a lot of really good new voice acting too. Movement and gunplay in Borderlands 3 is genius. Once I got things like FOV, frame rate, and sensitivity down, this became one of the best feeling FPSs I've ever played. Sprinting around the map, sliding into cover, blasting a guy in the face with a Jacobs revolver, grappling up onto a ledge, chucking a couple grenades, telling my jabber buddy to blow up one tough guy while I cloak and blast another point blank with a shotgun that plays BFG Division when I pull the trigger is satisfying. Actually, I don't have that shotgun. But I could have it if I just used BO3 items. Don't do this, please. $10 for one weapon in a PvE game. And if I just use this wacky discount code, I get 10% off. Wow, what a horrible deal. I could just hack my save to give me 40 Hellwalkers for free. Who decided this was a fun and dandy thing to do? This is shameful. Don't trade with people, grind for things, hack the frickin' game. Don't give these people money. Also, I got the shotgun immediately after I stopped recording. Immediately. And now I need to get another one because I hit the level cap. Oops. But you get the idea. Sliding and grappling around makes movement feel fantastic, the weapon variety is expansive, but it never feels overwhelming. And if you're a fan of customization, each character has 3 different active abilities to pick from and plenty of augments for them to boot. Flak, my character of choice because
I love hitting babies.
That guy's voicing him. Can cloak to deal guaranteed crits, can jump through radiation portals to deal damage, or just throw racks at his enemies. That works too. And each character has that amount of diversity in their arsenal. If you don't care for any amount of story with Borderlands, this is the best feeling game in the series, though it's lacking content through the sheer virtue of being so new compared to Borderlands 2. That's got nearly double the level cap, it's just got everything. There are some caveats to the Borderlands 3 experience for sure. Most of them are plot-based, which we'll get to when we cover spoilers. But we're not there yet, we're going to talk about loot and levels real fast. Loot in Borderlands 3 is ridiculous compared to previous games. Rare, ultra-rare, and legendary items are flying all over the place in your regular playthrough, and even just turning on Mayhem 1, which we'll talk about later, brings us to obscene levels. You're going to be swimming in loot for most of the game and the entire post-game for that matter. I guess that's neat because there's so many great weapons, but it does get old fast, and at the end of every fight you're just picking up the scattered guns like you're some sort of kleptomaniac subway rat. Additionally, while the level cap is 50, which is the same as Borderlands 2's base game, you level up much faster in Borderlands 3. I was able to hit the level cap in about 35 hours, just playing through the main quest, a couple proving grounds in the post-game, and then some side quests. I didn't even get to finish all the side quests. There really is no need to go grinding for levels, it'll mostly just be loot you're after, so if you already have all the weapons you want, it's probably time to play as a new character. It's also worth noting that the bank in this game also doubles as Claptrap's secret stash from Borderlands 2. You pick up a good item for one character, you can stick it in there and bring it out when you play as him later. These changes to levels and loot are definitely polarizing. I'm on the side that it's a little much on both ends. Hitting the level cap doesn't feel monumental, and picking up legendary weapons doesn't feel miraculous. Grass grows, birds fly, I get a new skill point, the sun shines, I obtain a new legendary item for killing a bandit. Okay, that's the last major objective change to Borderlands 3 before our spoiler warning. Let's wait the I don't want to be spoiled guitar look out before we continue. Also, take a note on the timestamp on the screen during this because it'll tell you when you can come back. If you go before then, you'll be spoiled. I'm sorry. Okay, everyone who doesn't want to be spoiled is gone? Okay, let's talk spoilers. I love Typhon DeLeon. He's a quirky, fun character with a whole bunch of heart and a shitload of fun Jewish phrases. The number of times I cracked a smile when he told me that it was a pretty long schlep from point A to B, or when he compliments me or a bandit, I'm not sure, it's one of the two, for the chutzpah, is probably like 5 times the number of times I found a joke in this game funny. But aside from audio logs he left behind in the decades before arriving at Necrotafeo, he's only seen like the third to last mission. And then he dies in 2 quests to Tyreen. I was upset about that, but it was nowhere near the gut punch handsome Jack delivers in Borderlands 2, or hell, the one Troy delivers in Borderlands 3. It's kind of, hey, I'm here, oh, I'm dead. Thank you, Typhon. You were probably this game's best character, from like a writing standpoint. Speaking of Jack, it really started bothering me once I was watching the credits that Damon Clark delivers the best performance in the whole game. He has like 10 minutes of dialogue. He's in a single side quest about Angel's Past, and he's exactly 1 gun. And I guess he is the first upcoming DLC. But Jack's thrilled to be a gun at least. I don't know, how do I put this? Oh, spoilers for Borderlands 2 as well. Can we get a little... In case you just want Borderlands 3 spoiled, not 2 for some reason, if you're a weirdo like that. Small guitar lick. Okay, so when you kill Angel in front of him and you can hear him crying in absolute rage and desperation, I still feel that. That is good. That is good character acting. Damon Clark is amazing. Tyreen kills off Troy and her own dad and there's 0 remorse. Troy kills off Maya, and Tyreen edits together a YouTube poop of it and sends it to you. I get it, it's because they're influencers. They're taking the Logan Paul approach to treating people with respect and dignity, which is to say, none whatsoever. So this troubling behavior is probably intentional. But I still can't help but feel like nobody really hits the emotional depth and range Damon Clark delivers in his one singular quest he appears in. And I guess that's why Jack's gonna be the focus of the first paid DLC. Look, he's already been in 3 other Borderlands games. I don't know if we need a 4th one to be Jack-centric. Can't we just move on? Can't we get a character with a shitload of character depth that isn't Hyperion's late megalomaniac? Couldn't we have just given, like, Troy or Tyreen more emotional depth? Troy almost has emotional depth, and they don't do anything with it. They also keep trying to allude to this theme and motif of a family. The Vault Hunters are a found family. Sanctuary 3 is a kind of family. Tyreen and Troy call the children of the Vault their family, but just use them as cannon fodder. Tyreen kills off her own surviving family, both for views, but also in a fruitless attempt towards godhood. But none of it amounts to anything. Never once does the game make a move about what it wants me to get out of this theme. Are they trying to make the point that the blood of the Covenant is thicker than the water of the womb? I could see that, given Typhon is disappointed in his children and agrees they should be put down if they won't behave. I could just as likely see the pared down inverse of blood is thicker than water, with how shallow the children of the Vault truly are. A third interpretation we found in the fact that Tyreen and Troy take advantage of family and get nothing in return for it, whereas the Vault Hunters rely on their family and they can protect each other and cover their weaknesses. Except we let Typhon die. I don't know, it just makes me a bit upset that they never stipulate on this theme they set up. Ditto on religion, or the internet, or whatever the hell the cult of the Vault was trying to mock. It's treated like an organized religion akin to if YouTubers or Fortnite streamers try to become televangelists. Their ultimate goal is to straight up become gods and free the Destroyer from the heart of Pandora. But again, if the writers had a point to make about that, a big message at the end, That still remains a little unclear, a little too open to interpretation. There's these motifs and themes, they just don't do anything with them. Also, while I thought the fake-out ending after killing Troy was funny, I don't really know if we needed it, or if we needed Necrotafeo. Necrotafeo really doesn't offer up enough to really warrant having it be added onto the game the way it was. I kind of wish they cut the fake credits gag, because it just did make me think that we probably could have just ended the game there, having you fight both twins instead of having to take a journey to Iridian's first landing, mess a thing up, and then head back to Pandora to fight the Destroyer. Again. Yeah, there's actually a surprising amount of this plot that mirrors the first game. Tannis is working very closely on the vaults, just like how she was in charge of the research in the first game. The Destroyer is the final boss of both and is a total pushover in both. When you compare that to the Warrior in Borderlands 2, which puts up way more of a fight and has a way more treacherous arena. And honestly, it just feels like an extension of 1 more than 2, but they just took pieces of 2 and attached them to 1. I guess that's fair. Anthony Birch worked on 2 and he doesn't work on 3. Also, the return to Pandora at the very end of the game is nowhere near as fun or fleshed out as the player's second time touching down on the planet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it almost feels strapped for time. Like, this was the last bit they had to work on before the game was ready to launch. They were running down the clock and didn't have time to make Tyrene's last stand anywhere as dramatic or intense as Heroes Pass in Borderlands 2. She has next to no dialogue in the final quest of the game, goes down incredibly easily, and then they just pull this hasty, Lilith sacrifices herself, see ya, at the very end of the game to give it a wrap-up and an emotional, keystone. It really doesn't work. I would have liked some more banter, maybe giving Tyrene this sort of handsome Jack-ish losing monologue. But instead, she just stops talking and vanishes, which feels so out of character it hurts. One aspect of the plot that I actually did like was Tannis is a siren. I dig it. Tannis kind of needed some character development that wasn't just poking fun at people with Asperger's. And if anyone in the game had to become a siren, I would have wanted it to be her. She earned it. What I'm not really a fan of, though, is now we know that a siren can pass on their powers upon their death to a specific person. Otherwise, they're cast out into the void and a lucky woman in the 6 galaxies becomes a siren out of the blue. That opens up a great big can of worms I really don't think needed to be opened. There's now so many rules that need to be clarified versus if sirenhood was just an innate part of one's character from birth and had to be awoken, as was implied in the first 2 games. It also feels like a sort of cop-out, so they can just change who's a siren and how. Oh, now we can just, get rid of a bunch of sirens and get new ones, because it sucks to be a siren. This game alone had 4 of them die out of the 6 in the 6 galaxies. Tyrene and Troy, who actually did acquire their abilities from birth, and both playable sirens, Lilith and Maya, are dead by the time the game's over. Angel has her abilities passed on to Tannis, Maya's get passed on to Ava, who is pretty much just a tiny Maya. And we have no idea what happened to Commandant Steele's abilities, or what they even were. We still have no idea. And if that wasn't enough, Myriad, the siren who sealed the Destroyer and witnessed the end of the Iridian people, hints at a great war about to unfold to find the 7th siren. So all of the siren lore is just suddenly out of the window on this one. That feels really weak to me. It begs the question as to how viable it would have been to adapt most of this to the previous siren lore. I smell some retcons coming. A lot of them. Not gonna be good. Also, I'm certain Mick Gordon did more to the game's audio than just provide the sound of the Hellwalker shotgun. And if that's all he did, I will eat this whole box of receipts up here. Welcome back from Spoilersburg. Or if you're just joining us, the final no-spoiler objective point. Beating the game unlocks true Vault Hunter mode like in previous Borderlands games, and I'm not really sure how necessary that is because you hit the level cap so quickly. But it also unlocks Mayhem levels, a new post-game event that attaches negative debuffs to the overworld but increases cash drops and loot chances. Additionally, having any Mayhem levels activated immediately makes the whole game, all the enemies and unfinished quests, scale to your level. So there's still plenty to do in the normal mode post-game. That's a feature I love an awful lot. I actually played a post-game instead of just moving on to a second playthrough or trying out DLC. I mean, there is no DLC for me to play yet, so that'll do it. Mayhem levels are probably the single best addition to any Borderlands game. I will say though, some of the debuffs you can get saddled with, like your own bullets having a chance to ricochet back and hit you, or enemies becoming more resistant to an elemental damage type you might have centered your whole build around, it can be a pain. Often involving having to fast travel back to Sanctuary and trying to land again, if not having to close and reboot the whole game. It's an occasional inconvenience, but not having to complete the absurdly easy quest for rewards I'll never use is still far and away a great deal. And now we get to talk about the subjective part of Borderlands 3's caveats, the humor and the seasonal events. Not gonna lie, I kept a mental list of the jokes I laughed at. Here's the list in its entirety. In Sanctuary 3, there are pipes that read coolant and heatant. Flack's cold, deadpan reactions to most of the game's antics are great. Flack's backstory being they literally just gained sentience one day and knew they wanted to hunt, and that was it. Pain and Terror have a giant people-moving vehicle that they drive across the desert. Bonus points for Gearbox publishing the Desert Bus remake. The Jacobs Manor is loaded with cryptic puzzles like some sort of Scooby-Doo-like monstrosity meets escape room. Antimatter Baby. And that's about it. There's a lot of really mediocre comedy in Borderlands 3. You've got things like Big Doc Energy, the Rise and Grind coffee shop, the entire existence of the Big Sook. Claptrap specifies he meant thick, with 2 C's at one point, not a CK. There's a mission where you help a disgraced esports pro break up an Echonet fast lane by overloading it with the freshest, dankest memes. There's a mission where you literally collect poop. And there's a mission where you have a guy who sounds like a bad Tommy. He's doing a bad Tommy Wiseau impression. Also, the entire existence of Transaction Pact. This is incredibly subjective, but more than just that, by trying to keep its finger on the pulse, this game feels dated at launch. Rick and Morty jokes are old hat, yet 2 enemies in the game are just straight up Rick and Morty themed bandits. Here comes Dat Boy, he's coming to us from April 3rd, 2016, yet it gets a reference in this game released 3.5 years later. And both Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3 contain Skyrim jokes. The difference is Anthony Birch apologized for his in 2012. Additionally, at the time of recording this, the Bloody Harvest event is going on. Enemies can be haunted, and when killed, will spawn ghost enemies that charge at you like a lost soul, dealing damage and saddling you with the terror debuff. They can be killed, at which point they'll drop items anointed with buffs that increase the more terror debuffs you take on. You cannot opt out of the system unless you plow through the main menu and don't let the game sync up with the Halloween event coordinator. These weapons will be mostly useless after the event unless you have one of the way more rare anointed items that generate terror debuff stacks, and in general are a way bigger hassle to deal with than they should be. The ghosts, but also the anointed weapons. And the event runs until December! December for a Halloween event! If the ghosts only spawned after opting into Bloody Harvest, talking to Maurice to start the quest, I could understand. But that's not the case. Maybe it will be for future events, I could hope, but Bloody Harvest 2019 has been a bit of a bust. This, of course, won't be a problem come mid-December, though there's supposed to be a Maliwan themed event soon thereafter, so who knows. Gearbox still has a chance to muck this one up. But with all this said, this is a damn fine game. This is better than most people give it credit for. It's not as good as Borderlands 2, but it's definitely the second best Borderlands game they've put out. The lackluster story and minor graphical upgrades in comparison to the rest of the upgrades that happen to this game are more than made up for with the stellar sound design, the phenomenal gunplay, and the overall sense of dizzying fast combat Borderlands 3 offers. Borderlands 3 is definitely worth the $60. But it's not the most bang for your buck. Borderlands 2 is still the best deal in the entire series. Borderlands 3 is currently available on PC, PS4, and Xbox One, with ports to Google Stadia and Steam coming in 2020. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.